mo. Suranggo abi singkat linsyo. Sing sa adi nimshim ni un jamfi mung sa kat singum. On suranggo adi sing le migdum ring ka linsyo. Shumana lingon abi gon agyapu moro song ni se de wrong mayen. Kamri everybody. I'm Adon Lepcha and I'm from Passingdang. Today I'm going to be narrating a story about the humans and the Yeti, the relationship. The Yeti, also known as a Bigfoot, is known as a theory all around the world. But here in Zongu, us Lepchas believe that the Yeti is real. And I also think that it might be watching at us high away from the Himalayas right now. So without wasting any more time, I'm going to start the story. So long ago, there was this boy named Atmu who lived far away in the Himalayas. The way he would spend his entire day was herding of cattle, taking care of his farm animals, going to the forest to collect some fern and vegetables, come back to his house, cook his food, eat it, and go to sleep. That was his daily schedule, most likely. So one day, it was just a normal day. After he had finished herding the cattle, he was inside his house. So he was cutting the vegetables and wild fern, and he put all of them inside a pot and kept the pot above a fire. So he sat on a bench nearby and started playing his flute. He started playing his flute for a while when he suddenly heard rustling of leaves. He stopped playing the flute and there was no sound. So then he was afraid. So he was sort of afraid that something is out there, but nothing came. He just started playing the flute again, but only for a split second that he played the flute, he heard the rustling of the leaves once again. Now he was getting seriously terrified, but then he stopped to take a breath. He started playing the flute again and there was no sound. Nothing crashed to the door, or no rustling of leaves, no growling or anything like that. And after a few minutes, something crashed through the door. It was something standing there was a Jamfimung, also known as the Yeti. He was terrified because the Yetis are usually friendly or like doing their own business during the daytime. But now it was the nighttime. It was after dusk when they start getting all aggressive. So he was very afraid that the Yeti is going to attack him or kill him, supposedly. But it did nothing. It was just angry for no reason. He could not believe it, that the Yeti didn't even attack him. He dropped his flute to the ground. When the Yeti picked the flute up and put it inside his mouth, something like a sign to make him play it. So after that, he played the flute and the Yeti got in a happy mood. It started dancing or just moving around in a happy mood. And then Atmu stopped playing the flute just to take a breath for a second, and then the Yeti got angry again. Just for a second that he stopped playing the flute, the Yeti got angry once again. The Yeti kept forcing him to play the flute even when he didn't, he couldn't take a breath. So it was very hard for him to breathe, and the Yeti would not go away even after a few minutes or a few hours. He had to play the flute overnight. It was dawn at the time, and that's when the Yeti just stopped being angry or happy. He just left the house and went back to the Himalayas. Atmu, he was confused. He didn't know what was going on, why the Yeti made him do those stuff, and he couldn't eat. He was starving, he could not sleep, he was dull, all the stuff. And then later at the night, the Yeti came again and made him do the same thing. Ever since that day, the Yeti had kept on coming to his house to listen to him play the flute. Atmu had So Atmu had barely any sleep or food during the night time. So it was very hard for him. And then one day, after all the stuff, his entire herding and stuff, he was inside his house. It was before dusk. The Yeti had not come at this point, so he was just waiting. But he had something in his mind. He had a plan. he always noticed that the Yeti mimicked him most of the time. Like, if he played the flute, the Yeti would sort of make gestures of playing the flute. If he did something, the Yeti would do it too. The Yeti was like copying him, trying to be him. So he had a plan at this time. After the Yeti came, he didn't play the flute. He went up to the fireplace. After that, he picked up a stick. Right at the moment, the Yeti tried to mimic him and picked up a stick. So that was sort of a sign that his plan might work. So he grabbed a jar of butter, opened it, and pretended to rub the butter all over his body. The Yeti mimicked him and she did it. She was covered in butter now. Then he went back to the fireplace, grabbed a stick of fire, and he pretended to light himself on fire. After that, the Yeti also went and grabbed a stick of fire. But she mimicked him, she did it for real this time. So now she was completely burning on fire. She was screaming in pain, growling, and like her entire body was burning because of her hair and the butter. She burst out of the house screaming in pain, and Atmu could even hear it after a few minutes or even after a few hours. Even after it was daytime, he could hear the screams of the pain. What was even more marvelous was that the entire melted snow trail that the Yeti had left behind while she was running high up to the Himalayas. And ever since that day, the Yeti has never returned back to his house, afraid that he might do the same thing again that he had done to her. And this story is also the reason why us Lepchas believe that we should not whistle or sort of like play a tune or flute during the night time, because we are afraid that something is out there, either just a Yeti or something even worse, that would make us do the same thing that the Yeti made Atmu do, or something worse. So I'm also warning most of you, all guests from around India, I guess, that you should also like sort of start being afraid or avoid whistling during the night time, because something might be out there. And thank you. Actually.